Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure for me to welcome you here today at our European Forum. This is an institution that is happening this year already the 27th time, and I really want to thank you for coming. Even if it is raining, we have the interest of almost 300 participants. Of course, not everybody is supposed to be here in the very morning, but you can be sure that we will have an interesting program. The agenda we chose this year was Europe's major challenges. And of course, there's a lot of challenges. You could talk about politics, economy, demography, migration, and. Of course, it will not be possible to talk about this whole agenda at one single day. So, of course, we concentrated as an institution that occupies itself, especially with European and security policy, at the security hotspots. Because we also have a situation, we are confronted with a situation that is, at least in my lifetime, unique. I never experienced any situation that was comparable from the number and the quality of crisis we are confronted at the moment. And therefore we try, also of course, to pick out the especially relevant crisis for Europe. And so far we also tried to make this program, concentrate of course on Eastern Europe, not only the war in Ukraine, but also what is going on politically in this way. We concentrate on the situation in Southeastern Europe, and we also will have the opportunity to look a little beyond our own plate and look what is happening in the Middle East region or wherever. I hope you understand that I will not greet anybody personally except our presenters today, because almost all of them are already here, and it's a great pleasure, and I would try to use this opportunity also to present them to you just for a moment. We will start in a few minutes, or in a minute. And the first one who will be on my side, of course, will be Ambassador Brix, the director of Diplomatic Academy. We are cooperating in a way that really could be a model for some institutions. Thank you very much. We are looking forward. And also, Bettina Rausch, the president of Political Academy, is here. She is backing our institution, and this cooperation certainly is very fruitful. Then we will have a video message from the Austrian Federal Minister for Defense, because she had to go to Zagreb today and therefore cannot be with us. But then, and I now, before I go to it, we will have the statement of the former Prime Minister of Slovakia and now President of the Wilfried Martens Center, Mikuláš Dzurinda. He is here in the first row. Then we go over to Christian Schmidt, the High Representative of EU in Bosnia and Herzegowina, General Chief of Staff, Rudolf Striedinger, then the State Secretary, Stela Leucă, from the Republic of Moldova, and as I usually call him, the Mr. Foreign Policy of Ukraine, Borys Tarasyuk, 2 times foreign minister and in different functions, and now also the representative to the Council of Europe in Strasbourg. Then we will have an interesting noon with Markus Reisner making a military analysis of the situation, especially in Ukraine, Hanna Szelest from Ukrainian Prism, and then we will go over to the challenges for Europe with General Johann Frank from the Military Committee in Brussels, Sven Biskup from Egmont Institute, and the former Deputy Minister Vladimir Milov from Russia. And in the afternoon, under the auspices of our former long-time chief of the correspondence, we will have a discussion on the wave and questions of Europe's global role with Tommy Hutanen from Wilfried Martens Center, Teresa Fellon, specialist for Asian studies, Alena Kutsko from Globsec, Hüseyin Bakshi from Turkey, and Sergei Utkin, a Russian specialist living at the University of Denmark. So far, the program should be fixed up. Almost everybody is here already. In the meantime, you will get coffee once and a good meal also at noon. So far, you do not have to leave in order not to starve. And I think it can be and will be quite an interesting morning. So far, once again, I really want to welcome you. All the presidents I see, vice president of our institution, longtime president, the ambassadors, Wolfgang Petric from other institutions, from so many ambassadors, generals in the first row. I do not want to greet anybody especially. Heartily welcome to you. And I immediately ask to take over the Director of Diplomatic Academy, Emil Brix.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, as we know in Austria, everybody is an excellency and a president. So welcome to all of you. From my side, as a host here at the Vienna School of International Studies, President Fasslabend already said it's a tradition to have this European forum at the Vienna School of International Study, and we are proud of this tradition. We are not proud of the fact that 27 years did not solve all the problems that we have. But what we understand now is that such a discussion in a place like Vienna, and hopefully in a place like the Diplomatic Academy, is necessary. Again, Mr. Fasslabend has mentioned all the dramatic changes in and around Europe. And if there is one thing that a European security discussion has had to understand over all these years, is that we have to look outwards. That the European Union needs some sort of strategy, global strategy, not only on the paper, but in reality, starting from its neighborhoods, but going beyond that. And that's why I'm happy that today there will be a strong discussion also about security issues in general, a discussion about the Ukraine, a discussion certainly about how the European Union should act on the global scene, because otherwise we will lose not only the competition that we have around us, but we will lose also our own citizens. Because as we know, within the European Union, the results of elections are diverse, also in our region, in Central Europe. Some of them, I would say, in the last few weeks and months were more positive, others were less positive for Europe. But this is a typical situation that we have to take into account if we talk about European security. My last word is really is, in all these discussions, and I know that the AIES is doing this all the time, the migration issue has to take first place, because this is the one issue which people around in Europe at the moment and for the foreseeable future will be really interested. It's a priority issue. And it's not only an issue of how people deal with each other, but it's about how people feel about Europe. Whether Europe is something that is helpful to them, whether it gives them the idea that there is some sort of Heimat, as we say in German, or not. And I don't want to sound like someone from the far right corner of Austrian politics, but I really believe that this sort of European patriotism has to include also the discussion about how we can manage and organize and arrange migration and integration. But this is only part of security. We talk about a lot of things today, and my personal welcome to all of you for this discussion. Welcome.
Thank you, Ambassador Emil Brix. It's always a pleasure to have him here. He used to serve not only in Moscow, but also in London as an ambassador, and insofar, and has occupied himself also with Central Europe in a very intense way. So far, it's always a pleasure to exchange also not only ideas, but also positions with him. Now I ask a very significant man from our neighborhood, as I already announced, the former Prime Minister of Slovakia, who had the privilege to lead his country into EU and NATO in an extremely difficult situation, because he had to overtake, well, the situation after Prime Minister Mejia, when Slovakia was somehow isolated, at least from the Western world. And he managed within 2 years to bring the country into a status that they could join EU and NATO at the same time as the Czech Republic, Hungary, and Poland. He afterwards also overtook the position as a president of one of the most significant and most important think tanks in Europe, the Wilfried Martens Center in Brussels. Now the floor is yours, Mikuláš Dzurinda.
Dear President Fasslabend, dear Werner, Mr. Director, dear Bettina, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, it is always a pleasure to be in Wien, in the city which was the gate for Slovakia, but also for the Czech Republic, for the countries of the former Soviet bloc to join Western Community, NATO, and the EU. It is always a pleasure to be with good friends and allies here in this beautiful city. My dear friends, there is no doubt there are two major challenges facing not only us Europeans, but also the entire democratic world. The war of Russia against Ukraine and the situation in Israel and around after the horrendous attack of Hamas against Israel. At first glance, both conflicts seem to be relatively separated, not mutually connected. But the deeper dive into the issues, especially in case of Russia's aggression against Ukraine, is unveiling a more complex and more global confrontation. It is evident that the war of Russia against Ukraine is gradually transforming from the aggression of one country, Russia, into a global geopolitical contest between the West and East. China is the main beneficiary of the war, able to buy discounted energy from Russia and delivering drones and other weapons to Moscow. It seems China will feed Russia as much and as long as needed to protract the war, profit from it, and weaken the West. China's aim is that longer the conflict between Russia and Ukraine lasts, higher are the chances for cracks to show within the Western community. Another wider confrontation looms in the Middle East. The alliance between Hamas and Hezbollah with Iran is known. It is also obvious whom Russia is siding with. China stands inconspicuously aside, playing with its money and with its political influence. The global contest between the West and East at the helm with China concerns not only military mobility and hard power, but also economy, energy deliveries, strategic mineral resources, and technologies. China is continuing its policy of subsidies and aggressive assertion. The OECD, for instance, has warned that the global steel market is facing growing overcapacity, which is attributed to Chinese investments in new production capacity, especially in Asia. The EU has recently launched an anti-subsidy investigation into China's electric vehicle makers. A month ago, in mid-October, we could see two distinct pictures within 1 week. Russian President Putin and Chinese President Xi Jinping meeting in Beijing to commemorate the 10th anniversary of the Belt and Road Initiative. And on the other side of the world, Ursula von der Leyen, Charles Michel, and Josep Borrell being invited by US President Biden to join, let's say, a steel and aluminum club in exchange for Washington dropping its threat to impose tariffs on imports from Europe. They spoke, of course, many other global, even more sensitive issues. The symbolism of the current global geopolitical contest couldn't be more accurate or more impressive. On one side, we have the global East, represented by China and Russia. On the other side, we have the global West, represented by the United States and the EU. A logical question could be, does it mean that has the current world order been set in motion? In the latest edition of the Foreign Policy magazine, you can read an article entitled "The Alliances That Matter Now," with a subtitle, "Multilateralism is at a dead end, but powerful blocs are getting things done." There is something to it, especially if the Security Council of the United Nations is more paralyzed than active, if the WTO is being challenged by the biggest players, if a number of conflicts is rising, not decreasing, it is a reality. We can agree or disagree with the article, but the one thing in my mind is obvious. We Europeans cannot lose if we bet on our transatlantic alliance. This is our bloc. However, there is one precondition to make this alliance strong and functioning: to strengthen its European pillar, especially in the field of defense. Both major conflicts of these days happen in our European neighborhood. It is natural that, especially in the case of Ukraine, the center of gravity, when it comes to overall assistance to Ukraine, is gradually moving from the United States on the EU. Ukraine is our neighboring country. It has been granted the candidate status. The day before yesterday, the European Commission has recommended EU leaders open accession negotiations with Ukraine. Congratulations, my dear friends, Foreign Minister, Ambassador. It is natural. The US expects us to shoulder greater responsibility for Ukraine, but also for the countries of Eastern Partnership and the Western Balkans. The North Africa, especially the Sahel region, also requires our increased attention and activity. Russia is strengthening its positions in Libya, Burkina Faso, and other vulnerable African countries. And this is, by the way, one of the main resources of immigration to Europe. This is also a very sensitive point, as you mentioned, Mr. Ambassador. These countries in Sahel face terrorist attacks of different military groups. The EU should not leave the assistance to these countries to Russia and China. We need to act as Europeans as well. And this is why I very much welcome the first live military exercise of the EU in mid-October in the south of Spain. Air, land, and maritime armed forces from 9 EU countries landed on a beach to rescue a fictitious European ally that was asking for help to deal with a rapidly deteriorating security situation caused by a violent extremist group. Spanish troops played the enemy forces, but it was very impressive by my mind. Doing more such efforts in the future and conceptual building of joint European armed forces is inevitable. Only then the EU can enjoy higher respect and authority in its neighborhood and beyond, also in the Kremlin. Last but not least, the prospect of former US President Donald Trump's return to the White House is also pushing us, the EU, to try and be less reliant on Washington, especially in the area of defense and security. In other words, the EU needs to have the necessary means and capabilities to act together or alone, if necessary, to handle a wide range of security challenges. Being able to do that, we need to make our internal reform, not only for the sake of an effective defense, but also for the sake of the next wave of the EU enlargement. The countries are waiting, not only Ukraine and Moldova, but also the countries of the Western Balkans. We need to change our decision-making in the area of foreign policy and security in order to decide more swiftly and effectively. And we need a reform of our financing. We just need more money for our common communitarian level to effectively carry out the current competencies and the future ones as well. And we need to simplify the structure of our institutions to make clear who is responsible for what. Dear friends, at the very end, I'd like to remind you that exactly 50 years ago, in 1973, Henry Kissinger, the US Secretary of State, supposedly complained that Europe didn't exist, as there was no single telephone number to call. Well, this is an anecdote, sure, but there is something to it still. Even half a century since that episode, we, the EU, are not united enough. Europe is not yet whole and free. Time to make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Prime Minister, you gave us not only a short description of the situation we are confronted with, but also I think you pointed quite clearly at the fact that there is even a larger frame we have to look at. It's not only single crisis hurts we are confronted with, but it's the general situation of the globe that is or has become a challenge, an enormous challenge for all of us. Thank you very much, and now I ask Bettina Amon. She is not only a member of the Austrian Parliament, but she has also developed in her function as director, as president of the Political Academy, a program especially for Southeastern Europe. I only can congratulate. Please, Bettina.
Dear Werner, Emil, Brix, dear Mikuláš, ladies and gentlemen, it's not an easy task to speak at this moment. It's only 9:40, and I have the feeling we have a situation here that everything has been said already, but not by everyone. So it's up to me now to share my thoughts with you, and it's the thoughts maybe from a slightly different point of view, but maybe we'll come to the one or other same conclusion. My point of view is the one of president of a political educational institution here in Austria and of an Austrian politician in her 40s, maybe in the middle of all these problems and challenges you were talking about. Thank you very much for having me here. Very warm welcome to everybody who is here, and it's always a pleasure to speak at the European Forum here in Vienna, the 27th already, which is something, Werner, you and your team can be very proud of. I remember very clearly the day when I spoke here last year, when we were together, when I stood here, the podium, and I talked about the shock it had been to realize that there was war again in Europe, in our neighborhood, and that it had been going on last fall already for longer than we had expected, or at least hoped, so to say. And now, 1 year later, we are standing here, and we heard that already. The situation in Ukraine has not changed for the better at all. This war is still going on. The Russian aggressor is still on Ukrainian homeland. And not only in Ukraine, we have a lot of problems and challenges for the people. People are suffering, regions, cities are devastated. But in the last 12 months, we had to witness other conflicts coming up that we had not expected, at least the general public had not expected that. There are many experts here in this room, but what I see every day and people I talk to are kind of normal people, and they were also shocked when they heard about those new developments. What happened in the last 12 months, for example, and you know that for sure, we witnessed the expulsion of hundreds of thousands of Armenians from their homeland in Nagorno-Karabakh. And we are witnessing, or had to witness, a conflict in the Middle East, a conflict that actually also my generation was kind of used to, that it exists. But what we saw now, the new outbreak, is shocking nevertheless. We had to witness the brutal, the barbaric attacks of Hamas terrorists on Israeli people. People were raped, kidnapped, beheaded, slaughtered, and all these situations were filmed, which is something that we cannot tolerate to happen to civilians. And then we witnessed the retaliation of Israel, understandable why it happens, but still too many people are dying in the Middle East at the moment, which is something you cannot be at ease with if you have a head and a heart. And me being part of a generation that grew up in peace and prosperity from our birth, this altogether is very hard to cope with, I see, and it's hard to witness. And we also, and this is something I say as a politician, we witness a public in Europe and also in Austria, that have to deal with consequences of situations and conflicts, Mikuláš talked about it, that they cannot really understand, that they feel that they are not responsible of, but they still have to live with these consequences. Rising energy prices, goods that are not available, economic turmoil, some happening, and also security issues that are coming up and are also virulent within our countries. And as this situation makes people tired and angry, I think we still cannot allow these developments to make us dull or tired. On the contrary, especially we as Europeans, who are still living very privileged here, especially in Vienna, in Austria, we have to face important questions at this moment. We have to face questions like, what is the answer that we can give as a continent and as a community to this geopolitical unrest? And if we are honest, we also have questions that arise from our own society as we see anti-Semitism that flared up again in Europe. The European Forum has always been a place to discuss ideas, new ideas. Mikuláš even offered kind of manifesto here on the podium already that can be discussed, and many of you, I think, are still already eager to discuss all these ideas and answers that were already offered to us and that you shared with us. I think, Emil, you said it, that you said that the European Forum could not answer all questions and challenges that were coming up or had been coming up in the last years. But still, we have to try. And coming together today, and you all joining this forum, is a strong sign that we want to try that we want to stay in touch, that we want to talk, that we want to listen to each other, that we want to work on new solutions to new challenges. As the Political Academy, Werner already mentioned one example, we try to take part in these discussions and in this task and challenge. Our aim is to help people to understand the world they live in a little bit more. This becomes even more difficult as the world gets complex and new conflicts arise, but still, we are working on it. We are a platform for dialogue and exchange, not only for domestic political issue, but also as far as foreign policy is concerned. We have organized study trips to the Western Balkans, and now are starting to organize study trips to the African continent, also for local politicians and regional politicians here in Austria to get in touch with people from other countries and understand local issues, regional issues, and geopolitical issues more. We offer a lot of material through podcasts, publications, and also e-learning tools that are easily accessible for many people around Austria, but also around Europe. And we are very pleased to partner in events like these. So let me thank the Wilfried Martens Center, Tommy Huttunen and Mikuláš Dzurinda are here today. Let me thank the Diplomatic Academy, its director is representing it, and let me thank you, Werner, very much for organizing these events, having us as a partner, because also we and our community that is also invited to this event benefit a lot from it. And I hope also that our continent and our countries will benefit from it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Bettina. Now I want to hand over. Before I do that, I also want to make an exception from my announcement. I said I would not greet anybody personally, but I make one single exception. This is our honorary president, former minister and commissioner in Europe. What a pleasure to have you here. Thank you for coming. Yeah. And as I said, now I want to hand over. I will hand over to our new president, Michael Zinkanel. He has overtaken this task just at the beginning of this year. He is ambitious and he is one of the pillars for our success. You know, we are a team combined of not only a young team, but also very experienced diplomats, generals, academics, people from economy like Martin Seidig or Ernest Huber, Christian Strohal and others. I just want to mention a few ones. It's always a pleasure to combine experience on the one hand with ambition and new methods at the other hand. And I think now the time has come for Michael Zinkanel, the new director of AIES.
Thank you very much, Werner Fasslabend, dear Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues. It's my pleasure and my honor to welcome you all also in my position as the new director, not president of the AIES, to this 27th European Forum, where we will be discussing major challenges for the European Union. One major challenge that I'd like to address at the very beginning is that we are having prepared a very tight schedule for you. So due to time constraints, I would like to invite one of our keynote speakers, High Representative for Bosnia and Herzegovina, Schmidt, to the stage for your opening remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael Zinkenal, Werner Fasslabend, Mikuláš Dzurinda, Mr. Brix, Madame Rausch-Amon, thank you very much for inviting us today to this 27th European Forum, which in my competence as High Representative for Bosnia and Herzegovina of the international community, Wolfgang Petritsch, sitting here, knows very well about the challenges of this situation in this country, that seems to be, if you have a yearly conference, it was exactly the first 1 year after the Dayton Peace Agreement in 1995, so that I follow and join those who are saying, why are we sitting here now 27 years ago? We had the impression that the most important thresholds to overcome for, should I say, for the eternal peace situation are done. And like it is, if you look in the details, you see there's more to be done, more challenges. Not only that is static work to develop all, let me say, like any officer in the European Commission to work every questions about the screening and about acquis communautaire, but there are new challenges coming. Nobody did, like Mikuláš, you talked about China. Nobody did talk about new Silk Road. Nobody did talk about Western Balkans in Thessaloniki yet, as the idea and the need to have somehow a geostrategic understanding about the region. It was just to encourage them to go and accept and work with a not easy situation, adapting to the legal acquis communautaire and somehow to the political acquis communautaire. And we had the idea, and me as a German coming from a country who had made the experience of a fully peaceful reunification in 1989, 1990. By the way, yesterday, just it has been 34 years ago that the Berlin Wall break without one shot, without one drop of blood shed. Today, we have to see that new challenges are coming. Not to be compared with the old East-West conflict, but that we have in between as well not really worked with all challenges which we somehow knew. So I may allow myself first to congratulate the Ukraine, Moldova, and you allow that I congratulate Bosnia and Herzegovina as well for getting starting conditional, but starting into negotiations for membership. But this should be the very time where now you allow that I'm switching from my position as High Representative in this one of a political observer of the last 30 years. That I think we have to readjust something. We are in the mood that it's just going like in Thessaloniki 2003. You have to work, you have to go, you have to do, and they are going and doing and working, sometimes successful, sometimes not. But that they as well, there is a basic commitment for everybody to join the European Union as it is. And if you see Madame Ferrero-Waldner I know we just had the opportunity recently in Salzburg to have a panel and reflecting about what has been done, thank you, but what should be done. And this is, I think, we have to go reflecting whether the idea of the ever closer union, which we learned from Jean Monnet, is sufficient for today. This is coming with some reference to some statements yesterday. I've read this morning. Milorad Dodik, one of the famous examples of non-ambiguity and not understanding about what European Union should do in his statements. I hope there's something more behind in a better sense. He said yesterday, quote, they are once again, this is European Union, once again dissatisfied with what was delivered to them. Why do we have to deliver something to them? We were not elected here to fulfill their wishes, but to fulfill the wishes of the people, end of quote. This describes more about the problem than one should think. There is some intention that European Union has to deliver and others just have to follow. I wouldn't see that this is the case in the Ukraine, because the Ukraine nearly exactly knows what is on stake, but this is some addressing on us. What are we attending to do in a situation when we want to make one first political message? And this message is, you belong to Europe, and we belong to you, and there should be nothing in between. So let us work together. I had the honor in the year 1994, already in the crucial years, to be part of a team drafting a paper which is known as the so-called Schäuble-Lammers paper, where we had reflections about European politics. And just having read this again, I would say there's something in we should really reiterate. This is that the ever closer union principle and the European Union consisting out, if I add 6 Western Balkans countries, Turkey up to now, Ukraine, Moldova, we do not talk about Georgia in this moment, but putting this in account, you see far beyond the 30 member states. Could you have an acting, effective political structure doing decisions, making unanimous decisions, and having people like this Milorad Dodik, whom said sometimes he is very close to Mr. Lavrov, to sit on the table and veto? I cannot. So I think what has been done recently, just last week in Berlin, at the occasion of invitation of the German foreign minister, to think this what Monsieur Macron already started to have as this idea of the political union could be an answer. I thank Bratislava Globsec that last year at the conference Emmanuel Macron worked on this very explicitly in his speech. I think we have to reflect what could be the approach in a gradual approachment to European integration. Why? Because I would not like to talk about Ukraine. There are people knowing better and more than me, but about Bosnia-Herzegovina and somehow about the Western Balkans. And where should I do it not better than in Vienna? You know very close about the situation, and you know the young people in Bosnia-Herzegovina, they have no confidence in the political structures. They have no confidence in the integrity of the political personnel. They want to be part of Europe open Europe. What is their decision? I'm trying to go off, to be in European Union as far as possible. So I think they are determining the time frame. And looking from 2003 Thessaloniki to 2023 Brussels, we cannot have more 20 years to think about how this integration should work. I would invite us that we honestly think what we can offer, let me say in the next 5 years, which is feasible, possible, where young people say, okay, there's a progress. Let's go ahead, let's stay here, let's invest, let's put in the basis for our future life in this country. And if I say this, I think I could as well extend this to, let me say, Northern Macedonia or to Montenegro or to Serbia. So I think there is more need, and so somehow Milorad Dodik has some reason. It is not only to say, prove you yourself, what are you doing? Reporting about Bosnia-Herzegovina and the progress, indeed I have to say, there is, out of the 14 priorities, key priorities European Union has defined in 2019, the Commission in its opinion, maybe we have just counted, 1 is fulfilled, 8 are somehow in between, and the rest is not yet addressed. So this is, if either you go on the consequence of Copenhagen criteria, then this will be a long way, or you think, what are the gradual, the parts of a kind of integration which we can offer now to come beyond our, may excuse to everybody in Brussels, to a bureaucratic approach. No, that's easy said, but I mean we need a political approach. And the political approach is not yet fully mirrored in this what I'm reading. So I would suggest go sit with them and see what is possible, what is achievable, not what is absolutely to get 100% necessary. This should not exclude, and we could not exclude, but we should intend to have in the longer future the full membership in European Union. But the time in between is crucial. And I feel this every day. We have had in Bosnia-Herzegovina, in the year 2021, this is the latest figures I can share with you, which are proved with a population, with the census of 2013, about 3.4 million population, serious estimations of World Bank and of other institutions are thinking that this is about, in this moment, let me say 2.8 million. We had a draft were drained out of this country of 170,000 in 1 year. So it's an easy arithmetic understanding that we have no more 20 years to think whether chapter 8.3a is fulfilled, yes or no. And so this needs a readjustment of our understanding, because if this is a geostrategic situation, and aren't we aware that coming again back to the statement of Mikuláš Dzurinda and the observation about China, that we are in a situation where the West is not the only player in this region and elsewhere, that we, and not talking about Russia, that we have to make clear that there is the core of European values accepted and transformed into the Western Balkan situation. I would be reasonably optimistic coming back to our Schäuble-Lammers paper from 1994, we wrote in this paper that we should have an idea of a kind of core Europe. In these times, the discussion was whether UK would belong to it or not. Unfortunately, they have made their own decision about this. And I would not like to have a distinction between the more intense and the less intense members of European integration. But coming again, knowing that in this city, OSCE has its basis, its headquarters. Look how OSCE is struggling with this unanimous voting principle about finding a political approach in important issues with a member Russian Federation. So we have to think about majority voting in foreign affairs, not only in foreign affairs. By the way, we had offered, and with Lisbon Treaty, there has been a proposal to do this with the double qualified majority in voting, which is used in some areas already. So there is a need to have a basic consent, to make clear that security, foreign and internal security, and migration issues are the key for the consent we need at once. I would like to see more about state of law. This is important, but I would say this is as well a struggle you have to fight and not end it and cannot say everything is done. This is it's a living problem, but we should stick to it, and we should give a message, and I think this has been possible, and it's been possible now for the Council of Ministers and the European Council end of this year, to say, yes, we know you have deficits, we know we have some structural shortfalls in ability. Let us go and rethink enlargement of European Union. Let us give a political message ahead of the administrative message. And let us give a political message linked to financial messages. But this should be the rule and the key points I see. I'm basically optimistic that this can happen. Why it's necessary politically? Why? Because we all know in the Western Balkans, like in other countries, we do not know what the future will bring internationally. Those who are playing with the idea of secession, dissolution, they have to know that especially in the Western Balkans, dissolution may be, it will be hardly a peaceful dissolution. If you think about changing of borders or redrafting a statehood and things like this. And I hope that in no part of the world, especially in the North Atlantic relations, we will not come in a situation back as we had unfortunately some years ago about some people thinking about things like this. Those are thinking about this, they should really see what could be the consequences. So I think the future vision for this country, for this region, is European integration, lowering the borders, not redrafting borders, lowering and giving more opportunity. But if we would now just give the 4 freedoms to everybody in this region, and I talked about the brain drain, I think we have to be very smart to do this in a way which is helpful not to the desires of the economy in the European Union, but to the needs of the population and the statehood in these countries. So my experiences, it's a little bit complicated sometimes in Bosnia-Herzegovina. I did not talk about Kosovo, quite other status questions are following, but it's manageable. It is manageable if it's very clear that we are there to assist, to help, and to do a lot in terms of security. This gives me the opportunity in the presence of the Church of Austria to thank Austria for this very, very important contribution to UFO Altea, as for in former years, and now it remains an issue where psychological reference is given from a lot of people saying, as long as the international community cares for this, what we do not want to see, we rely on staying. I would say, if we would think with a purist approach and they have to decide on their own and this is local ownership, I think probably it's too early. So thank you for being here and thinking about political future developments. I would not call for something which is close to New Dayton. I think you cannot solve the problems and answer the problems of Bosnia-Herzegovina at another US Air Force base. You have to do it in the country, and you have to do it with the people. Unfortunately, if you see the decisions of the European Court of Human Rights about non-discrimination, about citizens' rights, you see so far up to now that there is no appetite in the local ownership to implement this in the Constitution. Sejdic-Finci, the famous decision of the European Court of Human Rights, now already 15 years old, saying Mr. Sejdic as head of the Roma and Mr. Finci as the president of the Jewish community in Sarajevo cannot be not allowed, what is the case today, to run for presidency because he does not belong to the right ethnic group. This is not part of European understanding of equality. So we have to work on this, and if the political class does not understand that there is a need, we should invite the people themselves to talk about in a structurized manner. There is experience in the European Union, and I know we have to go for the keeping the identity of the different ethnic groups. Somehow I would say Bosnia-Herzegovina is in a nutshell mirroring a lot of problems we see in other, and challenges we see in other countries, but it's not only about problems. I think there is a lot of opportunities behind. Thank you very much for having the opportunity to sharing these thoughts with you, and thank you for the Austrian contribution to this work where we see gradual success. Thank you.
Hi, Representative Schmidt, thank you so much for your very clear statements, not only focusing on the challenges that we're facing, but also giving us some remarkable insights on how to overcome them, especially mentioning that we don't have another 20 years to figure out how European integration should or must work. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my great honor to announce also our Minister for Defense, Klaudia Tanner. Unfortunately, Minister Tanner could not join us in person due to the fact that she had to go on an urgent trip abroad. However, we have a video message that we would like to show you right now. Ladies and gentlemen, Defense Minister Tanner.
President Fasslabend and Director Zinkanel, Generals, Excellencies, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. Unfortunately, I cannot be with you personally because at this moment I'm in Zagreb to meet my Croatian colleague. War, conflict and instability have returned. War has returned to Europe. Russia's attack on Ukraine has had an impact on all of us. Peace can no longer be taken for granted on our continent. Conflict has returned to the Middle East, and we see the horrific images every day. And this conflict also has consequences for Austrian and European security. Instability has returned to the Western Balkans. Only a few days ago, we sent 100 additional Austrian soldiers to Bosnia-Herzegovina to support the troops of EUFOR Althea. Europe's major challenges, the theme of the 27th European Forum Vienna, has been well chosen. We have to talk about our future. Europe's major challenges have also been described in publications by the Ministry of Defense. This year's publication is called Risikobild 2023, Krieg Europa. War for Europe. War for Europe means three things. Firstly, war in Europe through Russia's attack on Ukraine. Secondly, war against Western values. And thirdly, war against the European economy. However, there are many further risks, such as climate change, natural disasters, terrorism, cyber attacks, and uncontrolled migration. All these scenarios mean that we are facing a turning point in international security policy. The security situation in Europe has changed massively, and we must change our security and defense policy with it. It is essential that we as Europeans stand together and make common decisions, because only together we can overcome the threats of the 21st century. In uncertain times, we have to become more resilient and efficient in our responses and actions. As for Austria, the increase in the defense budget is an important first step. With a budget of 18 billion euros in the next 4 years, we can make the investments we urgently need. Investments neglected for decades. We will modernize our armed forces. To this end, we have drawn up a 10-year development plan. The main areas of investment are mobility, protection, and self-sufficiency. We will procure modern equipment, weapons, and material to increase defense readiness. Because modern armed forces need modern infrastructure, many barracks in Austria are being refurbished. At the national level, we are drafting the new Austrian security strategy. This document will be presented to Parliament at the end of the year. At the European level, we are working on the strategic compass, which is both a policy document and an action plan. Ladies and gentlemen, to cope with threats and challenges, Austria has always cooperated with strategic partners such as the United Nations, NATO, the OSCE, or regional partners within the EU. The Western Balkans are a partner region of the EU and have always been the top priority of Austrian security and defense policy. We see ourselves as a partner of the Western Balkan states on their way to the European Union membership. Our regional and bilateral cooperation aims at increasing security and stability in the region through dialogue and capacity building. Austria will continue to participate actively in the further development of the common security and defense policy, always within the framework of our legal possibilities. We will remain a reliable partner in international crisis management. We need a Europe which protects its citizens and their way of life. That is why we'll continue to contribute to the common security and defense policy. I would like to wish you an interesting event with stimulating presentations and dynamic discussions. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, after hearing these very clear and very detailed remarks from our Minister of Defense, Klaudia, I have the pleasure to welcome to you our next keynote speaker, the Chief of Defense Staff, Rudolf Striedinger, who has started his military career already in the late 1970s, rapidly ascended through the ranks and has accumulated over 20 years of high-level leadership roles. He will elaborate further on the remarks that we've heard from the Minister of Defense, especially focusing on the before-mentioned investments and modernization of the Austrian armed forces. Chief of Staff, the floor is yours.
President, directors of different academies, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, when you have a military here standing, then I think that you want to have precise data and the information. And I'm more precise when I speak in German, and I know that we have perfect interpreters, hopefully that they are able to start. And therefore, if you accept, I switch over to German, because it's a little bit easier for me, and the message will be more precise and clear.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is a special pleasure for me to further detail the statements of my minister, Klaudia, and to go into further details of military strategy. I do not want to present Austria as a role model, but though I have to go back in history, because military strategy processes cannot be achieved in no time, unlike political processes that may change overnight. So I would like to take you back to the times of the Cold War, where Austria was between the Warsaw Pact and NATO at the interface of confrontation lines, and where we, from our perspective, had a convincing defense concept for ensuring the security of Austria. And we would have certainly been, then there came the transformation of approximately 30 years, where almost all European countries reduced their armed forces, and Austria did so as well. But we did not only reduce the armed forces, but in the course of a reform commission, we also shifted the focus from military defense of the Republic towards a commitment to foreign missions, including also troops and command structures that we intended to make available within the framework of the European defense structure. But the militia was neglected that we needed in the previous defense concept, and degraded it into a reserve, which would require mobilization in a classical sense, and would have been inconceivable because not necessary. The past 10 years showed that times have changed in Europe, and at the latest in 2014, we realized that changes were underway, and therefore the government, the federal government, adopted and introduced a strategic change. Our core orientation of the armed forces was modified approximately 1 year before the Ukraine war started. We shifted the focus back to military defense of the Republic. That is a far-reaching step requiring a multitude of measures. We prepared for this process, also with regard to planning, but it had one big flaw in 2021, that is possibilities for implementation for financial reasons. And then there was February 2022. The political situation dramatically changed. The federal minister briefly mentioned it. The federal government and also the National Security Council, and that is all political parties, decided that the army needs more money, more funding, a process that has been seen throughout Europe. One special feature can be seen in Austria, that is we take a long-term, not only a medium-term approach, which is very essential for military procurement, and therefore need budgetary planning security until 2032, where the budget will increase gradually. To give you a feel for the dimensions, the budget of from 2023 to 2024 is rising by more than 50% in total. Overall, the budget will increase, will double. And when you just look at the investment area, we see a tenfold rise of funding. This is quite a challenge also for us, and therefore it was our task to make sure that this change from saving to spending money work. And the first year, 2023, was quite a success in this respect, and the Minister Tanner also spoke about a development plan with focus mobility on land, in the air, and in water. The second aspect is weapons, and the third one is infrastructure and the resilience of the army during times of bad supply. I have a different differentiation of aspects. We have very old equipment in some areas. For example, in the case of helicopters, we will replace those equipment, so we get new equipment with better performance. The second category is we take weapon systems and improve them. For example, with regard to tanks, we take our Leopard tanks to industry and want to have them upgraded. The third category is we procure equipment in fields where we have little equipment. For example, Pandur tanks, we buy additional ones. We expand the rest of the fleet so that we can are able to equip not only the standing army, but also the reserve. The next part is new areas such as drones over the entire range, from very small ones to fairly big ones, but also the anti-missile systems, an issue that we already embarked on even before the European Sky Shield. We want to take part in this umbrella because it's simply necessary in order to have the same or compatible systems in Europe so that we are a homogeneous airspace. With regard to the networking of Austrian armed forces in Europe, we are, of course, not alone in the world. We have a neutral status that brings advantages and disadvantages. It is the way it is. I, as the Chief of Defense Staff, have to work with this framework. We have to make the best of it. This is reflected at the European level that as follows. Within the framework of European programs, cooperation programs, armament programs, and standardization programs, we cooperate fully and try to solve issues cooperatively, which at any rate is the less expensive way, and also reasonable and helpful in practice. In the strategic compass and the rapid deployment capacity, we make our contribution. We have done so, for example, in the Spanish Life exercise in the area of Seville. And it's, surprising that we have, as a fairly small European country, we have the fourth strongest contribution after Spain and Portugal. That was quite interesting to see. In the first rapid deployment capacity area, together with Germany, we play a prominent role as a lead nation in the field of logistics, which is also a challenge that we are able to address quite successfully. And we continue our ongoing foreign missions with a view to the capabilities the Austrian army can offer. And when we do redimension our contribution, we do not for fun or because we think it's right, but because it simply doesn't make sense to send troops that are not fully deployable. That's something we do not want to do, but we also have reserve capacities that we have made available, for example, in Bosnia, and we will do so for KFOR in next spring. We are committed to the Western Balkans because it's our neighborhood, but also in other challenging situations. So I've shown you described the military approach of the Austrian army, and it's in many areas parallel to European developments. Thank you very much.
Herr General Striedinger, herzlichen Dank für Ihre Ausführungen. Es freut uns selbstverständlich auch immer ganz besonders, dass
Thank you very much. We are always very happy that the Austrian Ministry of Defense has always played such a prominent role as a partner of AIES and has always deployed very important representatives to these meetings.
two excellencies that we have invited from Moldova and from Ukraine, in particular also to reflect the EU Commission's decision to adopt the 2023 enlargement package, and also recommending, as already previously mentioning, to open negotiations with Ukraine and Moldova. And therefore, it is my great honor to welcome first and foremost Ms. Stela Leucă, State Secretary for European Integration from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs from the Republic of Moldova. Thank you very much for being with us. Thank you.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for the invitation. It's an honor and a pleasure to be in front of such a distinguished audience here today. And the topic that you have chosen for the 27th reunion couldn't be more timelier. You know, February 24 of last year, we quickly realized that the challenges are very much the same, maybe to different extents, but very much the same for all of us inside or outside of the European Union. When the refugees from Ukraine started fleeing their bombed country, there were the same long lines at the border with Moldova as they were at the border with Poland. People were freezing in the same way in that cold February, and there were children and pets, and everybody needed assistance, however you looked at it. So today we're looking a little bit of a different situation. Just a couple days ago, the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen just announced that the recommendation of the Commission is to open accession talks for the Republic of Moldova, along with Ukraine, but also Bosnia and Herzegovina. Indeed, the publication of that enlargement package report is an important milestone for us, for our country, for Moldova. It was the first time that Moldova is part of the report, and the first time that our efforts at consolidating our democracy and progressing on our reform path are being assessed against the backdrop of our new status, that of a candidate country and potentially a future member state of the European Union. But let us remember, and publicly say it one more time, that when the Republic of Moldova put forward its accession request back in March of 2022, it did so in the context of the brutal war that Russia had just launched against Ukraine. Aside from the aspirations of an improved livelihoods for our citizens, Moldova turned to the European Union as a project of peace and security, as a shield of common values and standards that would have the ability to protect our citizens. Since June of last year, when Moldova received candidate status, we started also working on the 9 recommendations that this status came with from the European Commission. And we worked on tirelessly on genuine and consistent reforms in such areas as justice sector, de-oligarchization, anti-corruption, public sector reform, electoral legislation, improvement of human rights, and fighting organized crime. Just about a month ago, I was attending an event in Vilnius along with other candidate countries, and we were speaking about our experiences over the last year. You know what we realized? We had the exact same issues. The same challenges were common for all of us. Either it was Northern Macedonia or Ukraine or us in Republic of Moldova and in Chisinau. The Moldovan government over the last year and a half has tirelessly and put dedicated work to bring our country closer to the EU and its standards, especially when it comes to the fundamentals of the accession process. That's alongside with the 27 pieces of legislation of the AIES that we're still trying to get our heads around, being a country of about 2 million people. We embarked on an ambitious justice system reform at all levels. Like Northern Macedonia or Albania, we're conducting pre-vetting and vetting evaluations for all of the top institutions in the justice sector, in the justice system overall, including from the moment when the new future justices are prepared at our National Institute of Justice. We're aiming for more independent and unbiased justice sector while preventing a long-term gridlock of the judiciary, which is still part of the resistance of the previous less democratic administrations that we've had in Moldova. We're conducting legislative amendments that we're consulting with the Venice Commission, and we're following the recommendations from the Venice Commission. We also set up processes that we didn't have before, like, for example, trial in absentia, which has allowed us to get final verdicts on high cases of corruptions that have been dragged through courts for over 8 years. But you know, today I was speaking to Vladimir just earlier before this event, and I realized that this type of things that we are trying to do for a greater good in countries like Russia are being used to against the people, and trial in absentia can put people's liberties and democracies at risk. We set up Anti-Corruption Prosecutor's Office as a separate independent body to deal with high-level corruption upon the recommendation of the European Commission. We also intensified our efforts at de-oligarchization and took a comprehensive approach, and as a whole of government approach, over 25 institutions in the country have come together to put together a plan that was later on consulted with the Venice Commission and approved. And now we have a very, very proactive and very intense activity plan, and it covers areas as like the audiovisual, election law, competition policies, and the like. We're also strengthening our public administration to become better prepared for the complex processes that are being called for on our way to EU accession. We've created dedicated positions that will deal with European integration at our ministries. We've created over 250 new positions in government. We've increased salaries. Some decisions being less popular with the population because they're politically costly but necessary in order to address concerns that were raised before, like brain drain, or the human resource capacity of the country to implement reform. But again, let us remember that while Ukraine has been undergoing reforms to get closer to the EU in bomb shelters and under siege, Moldova is also under attack, but a different, continuous attack of a hybrid war coming from the same Russian aggressor. Russia and its proxies are trying to undermine us in Moldova. They're trying to derail our democracy. There are many weapons in its hybrid toolbox. They tried to blackmail us with high prices for gas. Last year, during the heating season, our gas prices in Moldova have increased by 700%. 700%. 75% of our households were in energy poverty, which means that over 75% of their incomes were being used to cover energy costs. They did not succeed because we had the partnership of our European friends and also our transatlantic support as well. And when the prices were too high and we still kept paying, Russia cut off the gas supply against the provisions of the contracts that it had with Moldova. But that didn't work either, because that's when, again, European Union stepped in and supported gas supplies, gas supply from European Union to the Republic of Moldova. Last year was the first year in our country's history when we did not use Russian gas for heating for the heating season. So even though the war has brought so many challenges and so much negativity and so much pain, it also has brought some opportunities to Moldova, and moving towards energy options and energy independence is one of them. At the same time, Russia has also tried to get people on the streets to protest against the government by paying them certain amounts of money, paying the vulnerable. And that only lasted to a certain degree as the financial enthusiasm wore off, but also as the sanction regimes that were introduced by our partners also started kicking in, and the oligarchs that were abroad no longer had access to those sources of funding. They even tried to remove our government through a coup, but we prevented that too. We're building our resilience in very many other ways. Russia has also been flooding us with information, well, disinformation to be correct, but we're countering that. Illegal party financing, misinformation through the online space and the media are just a few more examples that we are fighting on a daily basis. Every day the battles are continuing. You know, the day when the European Commission was set to announce the recommendation to open negotiations for Moldova and Ukraine and Bosnia, we had a massive intensity of disinformation coming from Russia, including deep fakes involving our president, the spokesperson from Kremlin as well, coming in and trying to connect to those vulnerable groups of population who still are amenable to those lies. We've just approved our national security strategy, and for the very first time, Moldova has openly called Russia as its major #1 threat, along with climate change, along with demographics. So we aspire to membership because we already share common principles and values. We believe in democracy, we believe in solidarity, human rights, and the rule of law. We're ready to do the hard work required to align our institutions, laws, and practices with European standards. We're ready to make further reforms, ready to continue fighting corruption. But this is not just about Moldova. It's not just about what we can gain. It's also about what we are prepared to give. In the current security crisis, Moldova is growing its role as a contributor to regional security, and the Ukrainian refugee crisis was just one of the few examples. The road to accession is not an easy one, and we understand that there are very many challenges ahead. We are willing to confront those challenges, and we strongly believe that we will be much more efficient to do it together rather than on our own. And whatever gets tested in the sandbox of Moldova has the potential to move further into the European Union. And let's work together for that not to happen.
State Secretary Leucă, thank you very much for your remarks and also for mentioning not only the struggles that Moldova is facing, but also the opportunities and where the European Union can also bring some new perspectives. Ladies and gentlemen, we have one more keynote speaker before the coffee break, and it is my great honor also to introduce to you Borys Tarasyuk, the former Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine and the current permanent representative of Ukraine to the Council of Europe. Mr. Tarasyuk, thank you very much for joining us again.
Grüß Gott. It's my pleasure and honor to participate in yet another European forum, which was organized by my long-time years friend Werner Fasslabend, the former Minister of Defense. And using this opportunity, I would like to say that whenever I'm participating in this Vienna European Forum, I see the highly professional audience, participants, speakers, and it is a pleasure to be in such a company. Especially I would like to mention the Prime Minister Dzurinda, whom I used to know probably since last century. And also it's my pleasure to see again famous Benita Ferrero-Waldner. I remember, Benita, how many discussions we had about the relationship between Ukraine and the European Union. So I'm happy to report to you that the day before yesterday, the European Commission finally took a decision to recommend to member states to begin negotiations on membership of Ukraine. as well as with Moldova. And I salute Moldova for these achievements. Also, I would like to see here mention Martin Seidik, Ambassador Seidik, whom we had very constructive discussions at the previous forum. Dear colleagues and friends, since the topic of our conference is the Europe's challenges, let me concentrate on the Europe's security challenges we are facing now together. So, from my point of view, there are many security challenges, but the challenge number one is the aggressive Russia. Before 2014, Russia instigated separatism in Moldova, in Karabakh, in Georgia. In 2014, Russia has created another crisis, starting a hybrid war against Ukraine, as a result of which they temporarily occupied Crimea and the parts of Donbass. Finally, 24th February last year, full-scale aggression from three directions, from south, from east, and from the north, Russia has undertaken. As a result, a cruel war Europe had not witnessed since the Second World War. All this preceded with misleading propagandistic campaign and the tactic of test the reaction. Putin has the plans to be self-reappointed next year, which is going to be a violation of Russian constitution. And let me remind you that it was the decision of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe that as of next year, after the termination of current term of Putin, he is not going to be considered by the Parliamentary Assembly as legitimate president of Russia, and the whole power, system of power of Russia will be considered illegitimate. So this temptation of Putin is in itself the continuation of a challenge to the Europe's security and the world's security. What do we see in Russia itself? We see the weak civil society, no visible political force capable to resist a despotic Russian regime. Another challenge I see is the challenge for the unity, including transatlantic unity, between Europe and the United States. Before 2020 US elections, we had a tension between Europe and the United States. Now, before the elections of presidential elections of 2024, we are facing and seeing some elements of this possible tension, another tension between the United States and Europe. Also, what is the challenge to our unity? The challenge which is being caused by the attack of terrorists Hamas against Israel. And already it created a tension in some major capitals in Europe. Another challenge we are facing, this is the terrorism. Terrorism which was once again reminded us by the terrorist Hamas attack against Israel, and supported, not surprisingly, by Russia and Iran. Violence in the European cities as a result of the division of the societies, division which was called by this terrorist attack. And in addition, the major thing, this is the Russian war of terror. By the way, the European Parliament and the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe referred to Russian regime as terrorist regime. Another challenge I see, this is the inadequate preparedness for the defense of Europe, European countries, and European values. Look what happened with the arsenals of major European powers. So they are almost empty. A lot of heavy weapons are not combat ready. So, and this revealed the weaknesses we are facing. The internal policy factor also is a challenge, because the elections revealed weaknesses of democratic institutions and tradition, populism and attempts to undermine unity within the European Union and NATO. Among other challenges I see the vulnerability of democracies to Russian propaganda and subversive activities. So what they are subjecting at? They are subjecting at democratic values and principles, our democratic values and principles. They are targeting the freedom of the mass media, and this freedom of mass media is being used by Russia to impose their false narratives and lies. And in some instances, it works. Another challenge I see, the threat to freedom of navigation principle. What we see in the Black Sea and in Azov Sea. Russia literally violated the fundamental principle of freedom of navigation. And it is contrary to the commitments of Russia itself, according to the United Nations Convention on Law of the Sea, and especially after 2014 temporary occupation of Crimea, Azov Sea as well, Kerch Strait. But recently, Ukrainian armed forces have demonstrated the ability not only to counter, but to push Russian Navy away from western and middle part of Black Sea. This has been done by Ukrainian military. The last challenge I would like to concentrate on is the weaknesses of international system of maintaining peace and security, including the United Nations and OSCE. We are witnessing that these institutions in particular happen to be ceaseless against Russian aggression. They happen to be outdated with undemocratic system, including the veto right by 5 powers, incapable to maintain peace and security, which is the major responsibility of the United Nations Security Council. Could anyone name legal grounds for Russia to be a member of the United Nations or the UN Security Council? I don't see any legal ground for Russia to be a member of both United Nations and UN Security Council. There is no legal ground. So that means that United Nations is the system which requires deep, deep reformation. At the conclusion, I would like to say that Ukraine already for more than 20 months is resisting Russian aggression. Ukraine is resisting the second largest army in the world, which was considered to be. Now in Ukraine there is a joke that Russian army is the second largest army in Ukraine. So we see no alternative to a victory over aggressive Russia This is existential war. Any freeze of current status quo, the way to a new war. The only alternative, withdrawal of Russian forces to 1991 borders, reparations for damages and accountability of Russian military and political leadership. And in this regard, surprisingly, but the Council of Europe is doing something nobody expected from the Council of Europe. In particular, I have in mind the adoption by the Council of Europe on 16th of May this year, register of damage by Russian Federation to Ukraine. So this register of damage started to work, and we expect that it will be added by two other elements, that is the Compensation Commission and Compensational Fund. This is a huge work ahead of us. Also, we are working on the creation of ad hoc international tribunal, and we hope that the Council of Europe here again will prove its usefulness, although this is not a responsibility of the Council of Europe. But what I would like to say by mentioning these challenges, that there is a lot of challenges before us all, and much depends on all us whether we will find adequate responses to these challenges. I wish you all the success. Thank you very much.